Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
What's up, Night fans? Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Once again with you, my name is Jeff Sharon, along with Eric Lopez. And, Elo, we are in the full spring swing right now, aren't we? It's like crazy right now.
It is, with lots of drama and games to talk about.
We got basketball coming down the stretch. We're going to lead off with that. We got men's basketball, women's basketball also against Tulane. Men with a huge win up at Temple. We'll riff on that for a while. Baseball is underway. They're off to a very good start once again, 4-0 to start the season through the first 4 games. Softball had the big tournament out in California. Just way too flippin' much going on around here. This is the part of the season, Eric, when I was working in the athletic department, I got like no sleep at all because I had to shoot video of basically everything. We were at the arena almost every night. For over the weekend, like men's and women's basketball would be playing games at home the same weekend, and then you'd also have, sometimes I'd have to go out to golf, and I have to go to tennis, softball games, baseball is crazy. It's absolutely crazy sometimes. And what also doesn't help sometimes is the weather. If you're playing outside, like if it's
Sure.
baseball or softball, the weather doesn't cooperate with you. But we're kind of in that spring equinox now, so. So it's going to be a busy time. So once again, don't forget you can follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com. Subscribe to our email newsletters there. You can also subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, and TuneIn. Follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. You can follow me at Jeff_Sharon and Eric at Eric Lopez Elo. We're also on Facebook if you look up blackandgoldbanneret.com. We got some listener comments in the mailbag this week. We got a happening show. So let's go ahead and get started here. We've got so we'll start with the men's basketball team. Now we're recording this on Wednesday night, February 22nd. Just in, UCF men's basketball, huge win at Temple, 71-69 in a game where they trailed by 9 at the half, came storming back. B.J. Taylor, who was excellent down the stretch, 7 of 16 from the field, 19 points, 3 assists, had 4 threes in the game. Taco Fall with another double-double, 14 and 10 on 6 of 9 from the field. Matt Williams didn't quite do it with the three-point shot this evening, 2 of 7, but was 5 of 12 overall for 13 points. Nick Banyard had 11. A.J. Davis had 10, so 5 players in double figures for the Knights. They had a bad first-half shooting in 9 of 28. And then in the second half, turned it on. That was 58% from the field in the second half, 18 of 31 compared to just 32 in the first. And they get the victory in back of a couple big plays down the stretch, Eric. We saw it. It was B.J. Taylor hitting shots down the including a big 3 late. The defense looked like Temple may have had a shot there, a wide-open 3 that would have been trouble late in the game. But B.J. came up with the rebound, hit the free throws. Or hit one free throw, I think, and then Temple had a last-minute desperation heave that did not go in, and the Knights get a huge conference road win to go now to. Let me pull up the standings here. We're just
9-7,
9-7 in the league. Yeah, we were saying that this was a key stretch right now. They're 18-10 overall with 2 games to go. They have won 3 in a row against Tulsa, at East Carolina by 3. That was on Saturday. And then this game by 2. So 2 close road wins in a row, Eric Lopez.
Amazing, too, and swept East Carolina, which, remember, it wasn't that long ago. East Carolina has had UCF's number in men's basketball.
Right.
So that, And then to sweep Temple. Who would have thought of that? To sweep Temple at the beginning of the year. It's just remarkable. Because, right, they were down, and then they made a run, and then they were down. You're like, oh, this is going to slip away. But they would make a run and make big shots. B.J. Taylor make big shots. Matt Williams made big shots. I think he hit over his 103 in this game, which I believe is a school record for a single season now with 3-pointers. Taco Fall also set the record most rebounds in a season.
Yeah, we had some milestones tonight. That's
as
right.
well in this game, breaking Keith Clanton's record, among others. So, and Taco is great. Dominant. A factor. I think he had 5 blocks. I mean, he was a very dominant factor. Great win, and to get 2 big wins on the road in tough, close games, finding a way to win close games too. It's a sign of growth of this team. And man, I'm just excited. I mean, who would have thought 9-7 in the conference? I would have never envisioned that when we had this preview back in October.
Yeah,
and I find
especially considering how shallow the team is in terms of injury, right?
And I would dare anybody. I dare to find anyone that thought they could win 9 games in the league. It's pretty remarkable, and it's put themselves in this position. You got 2 games left now in the regular season. All right, you're going to host Cincinnati. Let's be honest, it's going to be a tough ask.
But you got them at home.
You do have them at home. Hopefully people come out. It's the last home game. I mean, this team really deserves on senior day to have a support, because this has been a fun team to watch all year. And I was talking to someone before the podcast, Jeff. I think it's the most fun whole season. I want to say complete whole season that I can remember with UCF basketball since the 2007 Kirk Sparrow team that we've talked about, I think, in the past in these podcasts, where they got all the way to the 2 seed in Conference USA, finished right in the regular season, beat Houston in overtime at the old venue, and Kirk got an extension out of that, and it was just an amazing atmosphere. That was a fun year, the whole year. This has been a fun year, the whole year. I know some people are screaming at me right now. They're listening. Wait a minute. What about the year we were in the top 25, which was Donnie Jones's first year?
Mm-hmm.
And that was fun. That first half of the year was fun when they beat Florida at the Amway Center. Certainly the most memorable basketball game, UCF basketball game that I've ever been to in person, when they won at the Amway Center, knocked off Florida. They beat Connecticut, I believe, in the tournament up in the Bahamas, got all the way to the championship game in the Bahamas before they lost to Harvard and Tommy Amaker's team there. That was a fun ride, and they got ranked in the top 25 for the first time. I think got as high as number 19 at one point. The reason I didn't bring that year up is the conference season went south. And
they ran out of gas
fast
that year.
And that kind of soured things because, and I'll never forget, they beat Marshall at home. It was a packed house I think it was over 9,000. You had Marcus Jordan, Keith Clanton, everything was buzz. It was a big buzz. And then they went on the road at Houston, and Houston just kept hitting threes after three after three. And UCF lost that game. And I remember Donnie Jones, the next game, that was the game where he put a freshman named Isaiah Sykes into the lineup for the first time. And he made a change, and they looked terrible. And from that point on, they never really recovered. They finished near the bottom of the conference. I think they were like 4 or 5 games under 500 in the conference. And what stunk about that is they had done their job in the pre-conference. They had beaten Florida. They had beaten Connecticut. That was the Andre Drummond Connecticut team, by the way. They had a resume in the non-conference, because I remember I was following that closely. It was a soft bubble that year in the NCAAs. Had UCF finished above 500 in the conference that year, which would have probably been top 3, top 4, with their non-conference resume, the odds were they were probably going to be in position to get in as an at-large into the NCAA tournament. So that's why, as fun as that first half of the year was, I don't bring that up as far as one of my favorite years, because I thought the second half of the year soured it a little bit for me compared to the 2007 year and this year. Because this year I had no expectations, and I still don't even know how we've gotten to this point, but we have, and I've enjoyed every minute of it, even through the ups and downs, because this team is just finding ways to win now. You're at 18-10. You have a chance, the Cincinnati game at home, as you mentioned. Then you play at USF, which is the worst team in the league, to end the regular season. If you can win, let's say you split that, all right? Let's say, you're right, because that's what the odds will say, is that you'll lose to Cincinnati and you'll beat USF. That means you finish 10-8 in the conference, 19-11. And if you win your first round game in the tournament, you get 20 wins.
Right.
This year, with like shorthanded as they are.
And the schedule and where they are in the standings. By the way, this is another little advantage, by the way, with the schedule that they have in these last 2 weeks. So we talk about the conference tournament. The conference tournament isn't until March 9th. Okay, it's February 22nd, the night we're recording this. So UCF has 2 games left. I think this is key. One home, one away. One home against one of the best teams in the conference, and one away at one of the worst teams in the conference. They have only 2 games left in the schedule. Let's see. Memphis has 4 games left. They're basically just ahead of them in the conference. UConn is 2 games. UConn also rather has an extra 4 games left in league play, and so does Houston. They're both at 9-5. Memphis is at 8-6. UCF is at 9-7. So UCF doesn't have to, where everybody else is playing 4, they're playing 2. So to me, that's an advantage heading down the stretch. They can focus on the Cincinnati game one step at a time, and then focus on USF to wrap up the season. They actually might be in a position where heading into the tournament, they might be, relatively speaking, well rested heading into that.
Which is huge. Yeah, no, I agree. And I've said this to someone else. We won't know this till the draw comes out for the conference tournament, where they finish and stuff. But depending on the kind of draw they get in the conference tournament, I think they can do some damage. Really. UConn, I think, has been the only team that I have felt don't feel comfortable at all playing. Like, right. UCF just doesn't match up well. And we said this, and they're very physical. They give Taco some issues. They're very disruptive. Even though they've had their injuries, they don't match up well. But otherwise, the Cincinnati game, we'll obviously have a better idea after Sunday's game at home. But, going back to that game at Cincinnati's the better team. But it wasn't like UCF was outclassed or anything like that. So I'm curious to see how they look at home against Cincinnati. SMU and Cincinnati are clearly the top 2 teams in the league. UCF lost a game to them at home, but again, it was a very competitive game. Houston right now and UConn are the 3 and the 4. Houston, UCF beat earlier this year. Mm-hmm. They split their 2 games. So then you got Memphis, who again UCF split with and dominated Memphis at home. They didn't, and then even the game at Memphis was a close game. Memphis kind of pulled it out towards the last couple minutes of that game. So I think if you're UCF, you're feeling pretty good that you can match up with people. Now, obviously, there's no room for error. They, at the same time, they could. It wasn't like, for example, the Temple game tonight could have gone either way. So if they were to play Temple again, that doesn't mean they're a guaranteed win, because they could lose in the first round. It's how these conference tournaments work. So, right now, as we recorded this, they're 9-7 in the league. SMU and Cincinnati are your top 2 dogs. You got Houston and UConn at 3 and 4. Memphis is the 5. So UCF right now is the 6. And more than that's probably going to be the worst case scenarios, that UCF's a 6. Maybe they can move up to 5, which would be huge if they can get to 5.
Right, because they get the bye into the quarters.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Now, let me explain this real quick, because people forget this about the American Conference Tournament. You got 11 teams, all of them go. And the first round, you have the 6th seed playing the 11th seed, which right now would be UCF against USF in the very first round. All right.
So they could be playing back-to-back games.
Right. They could be playing back-to-back against each other. Also, the 10 plays the 7, and the 9 plays the 8. Then the winner of those games move on to the quarters on the Friday, which is March the 10th. So the 1 would play the winner of 8-9. And then you have the 4 and the 5. Like I said, neither of them play in the first round. The 5, there is no 12th team. So the 5 gets to play against. So the 5 gets the bye basically right to the quarters. The 4 and the 5 play, and then you have 10-7 winner against 2, and then 6-11 winner against 3. So if you can get to 5, you can. You end up not having to play that extra first round game against a weak team. Now, on the other hand, you could pad your kind of resume a little bit, but I'm not sure a win over USF, 2 straight wins over USF would pad your resume with any kind of committee. All it would do would get you to 20 wins, basically. But if you can get to 5 and you're playing, then you are playing. Well, right now the 4 seed is UConn, so Now, it's tough to beat a team 3 times in the same season. I will say that.
Sure. No, well, now, of course, the game's in Connecticut.
That's
at
true.
the Excel Center in Hartford. Now, who knows? Maybe Houston ends up being the 4.
Right.
And UConn ends up being the 3. So maybe you don't even have to worry about UConn. Now, I think I'm not, I think you have to play it out. You shoot for the best, highest position you can and see what happens at the end of the day. If you're wondering, by the way, here's Memphis's schedule. Okay. They're 8-6 right now. So they're virtually in a tie with UCF right now, basically. Mm-hmm. Here's Memphis' schedule. You tell me how you think they'll do. They're at Cincinnati on Thursday night. They host Houston this upcoming weekend, which will be on Sunday. They host Tulane. That should be a win. Then they finish at SMU.
Oh, boy.
So they got the top 2 teams in the league. So I think Memphis at best goes 2-2, which ironically would put them at 10-8 in a tie with UCF. They split head-to-head, so I don't know what the next tiebreaker would be in that scenario. It might be common opponents, I'm guessing, how they did against common opponents, something to that extent against the rest of the league. But here's the scenario. Let's say they went 1-3 and UCF went 1-1. That would put Memphis at 9-9. So keep that formula in mind as we go down the stretch there in the battle for the 5th spot.
And looking at UConn, as of the time that we're recording this, remember that we're recording this on Wednesday night, they are playing Houston at Houston.
That's a big game.
That's a very big game right there. Then they are home for SMU on Saturday. Next Wednesday, they're at East Carolina. And then Sunday, March the 5th, they are home for Cincinnati. So they have Cincinnati left on the slate, too, UConn does. So they're leading that game right now against Houston at the moment. But boy, this we got a bunch of trains coming into the station at once here.
To
finish off the American season.
It is, and that you mentioned that Houston UConn. I mean, again, I think UConn will probably end up finishing 3rd, and then I think Houston ends up 4th. So if that's the case, yeah, you're UCF. You take your chances. You try to get that 5 seed, and which I think is possible. And then you play Houston in a quarterfinal game. And next thing you know, you win that, you're in the semifinal. Something that this program hasn't done before in the conference tournament in the CUSA or the American era. I mean, you got to go back to the ASUN days to do that. I think this is, Houston is a team too that's fighting to try to get back into that conversation to get in as an at-large in the NCAA. UCF, you're competing for people that are saying, well, what are you talking about? And what do they play? I think UCF has a shot to get to the NIT. And I think if they can get to 20 wins and make a run at the conference tournament, I think they got a shot to be an NIT team.
CBI certainly, I think.
At worst. So it's just remarkable. I don't think Johnny Dawkins has any chance to win Conference Coach of the Year because I feel like the Coach of the Year is going to go to either Cronin at Cincinnati. Whoever wins the league between SMU and Cincinnati will probably get Coach of the Year just because of the phenomenal year that those teams have had. That's usually the trend. But, man, I mean, an amazing year for Johnny Dawkins.
Deserves consideration at least.
Absolutely.
Sort of if they had an honorable mention, I think he should get it. By the way, last time, if I'm not mistaken, UCF was in the CBI was that 2010-2011 year where UCF officially went 0-12 because of the A.J. Romsa thing. But that was also the year that they started 14-0, opened the conference season with a win against Marshall. They were 19th in the country at that point in the rankings, I think, at the AP. They were 14-0 and then lost their next 9, or excuse me, lost their next 8 and dropped to 14-8.
So, does that mean that according to the NCAA, we were never ranked? Like, how does that work? Which I've always found like the silliest thing when the NCAA does this nonsense about vacating wins.
I think it's the dumbest thing in the world. It's like it's like you have to pretend that the games never happened. They did happen. I was there.
Right. It's recently, like Jim Boeheim, Syracuse head coach. You went to school at Syracuse. They just went ahead and celebrated his 1,000th win recently, even though, according to the NCAA, He only has like 900 and something because they vacated like 100 some wins because of violations at Syracuse. We've seen this at football. It's kind of silly.
Those wins happened. I was there. I saw them. It's
you can't go back. I mean,
you can't go back and be like, sorry, this game didn't happen. Those are penalties that are reserved from another time when it was like, important. You're never going to see anyone like take away a national championship because of it, right? They've never done that. And I know there are teams that have, won national championships in the past that you could probably take away a banner or two based on what happened. Like, think about the Fab Five, right? What if they had won that game against North Carolina?
Sure.
You're going to take away that banner? We were there. We saw it happen on TV. It's not like they vanished suddenly. So I think it's a dumb penalty, and I think that they need to rethink their penalties. But that's a discussion for another time. But
now, by the way, the year after that, UCF made the NIT, if I remember correctly. And I think that was the year they lost to Drexel,
yes.
I want to say, on the road.
They lost to the Drexel Dragons in Philadelphia.
Can I tell you why I remember that? The reason I remember that, and I'm trying to remember, my memory kind of comes and goes sometimes these days. I remember that because back then, Mark Daniels was, the beat of sports was on 1080 in Orlando, which is the station that I worked at. And I was penciled in to be the fill-in guy based on how I filled in for him a couple of times. I worked with the late Jerry Green, which was an awesome honor. It was fun. And I did that because Mark's scheduled for people, and people, UCF fans that tune in know this. I mean, it gets hectic with basketball and baseball where the travels and things like that.
By the way, this was the year that you're talking about that we beat UConn when they were number 4 in the Bahamas. But go ahead.
Oh, was it? Yes. I knew it was one of those years. It's all kind of like comes and goes. Yeah. So the Drexel thing, I remember that because it was based on, and I don't remember the specifics, but I know there were scenarios where had they won, I would have had to host another show or if they lost, stuff like that. So I remember just following that very closely. In fact, I want to say the night they played Drexel, I was at UCF Baseball. They were hosting Miami, and that was a game where there was a near dust-up at home plate between the two teams. And I was following the basketball game closely because I think what would have happened is had UCF won, I would have had to – I think Mark was going to have to host a show, but they lost, and I think I ended up hosting it. I don't remember the details because I think they had to fly in the morning. But the point was that's how I remember that NIT game at Drexel because it was impacting what I was going to do the next day. So that's kind of some postseason memories. But hopefully this team can get to one of those two, and I think there's a very strong possibility of that. It's hard to handicap those things from an NIT CBI. CBI, I know there's financial involvement in that as far as teams paying and stuff like that. I do remember UCF hosting the CBI. I was there for a game that year.
Got to the semifinals of the CBI that year.
Correct. They beat St. Bonaventure, I want to say, at home. I was at that game. So
was Andrew Nicholson on St. Bonaventure at the time?
Yes. I believe so. I'll never forget the St. Bonaventure head coach. And Brandon Hellwig of UCFsports.com has used this, which is great. The liner where the St. Bonaventure, they asked him about the game, and he was all about, they cared. He's like, what do you mean they didn't care? They cared. Of course they cared. It's the CBI. It's just a funny soundbite. It was just a funny soundbite.
It's the CBI. In the CBI that year, we actually hosted 2 games. We defeated St. Bonaventure in the first round. And then defeated Rhode Island, the Rams, in the second round. And
I want to say I was there too for that game.
Yeah, I know I was there for both, and then they shipped us out to Creighton, and Creighton beat us in the semifinals out in Omaha. So that's how.
Oh my goodness! And I remember that they had if I remember correctly, they did not have a good time traveling to Creighton either.
No, they did not.
I think it was a quick turnaround, and it was not.
It was 2 days later that they lost to Creighton. The Rhode Island game was on March 21st. Then they had to get shipped out to Creighton and play Creighton the next day. Or they had to ship out to Omaha the next day, which, as you know, is not easy to get to. And then they were playing it prime time on the 23rd. So.
And remember, they were flying. They're still, I mean, to this day, they still fly commercial. It's not like we've taken the charter to Omaha. So Creighton, I just remember, that was not a fun trip for them, and it showed.
Creighton, interestingly enough, who did they beat? They knocked off Davidson before we got to play them, and then they played. It's funny because the CBI, the championship round is a best of 3. And that year, Creighton lost to Oregon in 3. They won the first game, but then Oregon won 2 in a row to win the CBI, including the last game was a thriller. I remember that watching because we were thinking that we may have lost to the eventual CBI champions. But that was an interesting year. I think we do have a really good shot, obviously, at CBI. I would love to see us get into the NIT. I think that would be a blast for us to get to.
And it'd be a huge success. It'd be a huge success for considering the low expectations and where this program has been, quite honestly, the last couple of years. And, it's exciting. I mean, it's just been a fun year and a fun group. And it's a group that most of it returns. Now, you do lose Matt Williams. That's a big loss. But it's really a positive. It's just been great to see Coach Dawkins do his thing. And hopefully they can finish it strong, And I don't know. It's going to be – I'm looking forward to being at the game against Cincinnati and see how that goes, seeing the best team in the league. I think Cincinnati is the best team in the league, but, Cincinnati's got a tough game with Memphis on Thursday. How do they come out on the road at UCF? I'm looking forward to seeing how they match up and then finish strong against at USF. Boy, if they can get to 20 wins. There's something about 20 wins, a magic number.
Yep.
That would be pretty cool to get to that point and then finish strong and get yourself in a position for postseason.
Speaking of teams off to a really good finish here, women's basketball knocking off Tulane this evening. Like I said, a reminder, we're recording this on Wednesday evening. Final tally in this one, 56-51. The Knights and Coach Abe advanced to 18-9, 8-6 in the league, and they are firmly entrenched, Eric Lopez, in 4th place in the conference at 8-6. Having gotten the big win at USF, we talked about that. The Knights now 2 wins away from a 20-win season, and the impressive thing about this, Eric, was I thought the way that they won this game. UCF was up 4 at the half, withstood a rally from Tulane. Mind you, this is a road game, all right? And Tulane's pretty good. They're I think you were telling me they're top 4. They're 40th in the RPI. They're a pretty good team.
Well, Tulane had almost just knocked off Connecticut on Saturday night at home. They were lost by 3. They had a possession to actually try to take the lead and turn it over, and then they had one last shot to tie the game, and the game came up short. But they gave UConn all they can handle.
And they were victim number 101 in a row for the Huskies, by the way.
But they earned Gino Auriemma's respect. Gino even said the wrong team won that night. He thought Tulane was the better team that night. So a lot of respect for a Tulane team that, yes, is in the mix. When you look at the NCAA picture right now in the American Conference, I don't think people are sleeping on this because all the attention, and rightfully so, goes to UConn. You realize they're going to get 3 teams in to the NCAA tournaments as locks. And when I mean locks, UConn, USF, and Temple are going to get in. And then Tulane is that 4th team that has a shot to get in. Mm-hmm. In fact, coming in to this game, their RPI was at 44. So they were right on that line that could go either way. So this was a big game for Tulane, a very good Tulane team. And for UCF to go on the road and knock them off is huge. It's their second. I mean, it's not as good of a win as the USF for a variety of reasons that does not need to be explained on this podcast. We already know why USF's the biggest win ever. But this Tulane win is by far the second best win of the year, and it's the second big win in the same amount of weeks. The UCF right now is playing as good of basketball, not counting UConn. Let's just put them in a different category, right? Because they are. Other than UConn, there's not another team in this league right now that's playing as good of basketball as UCF women's, which is a remarkable statement to say.
Consider also the fact that UCF tonight, again, in this game against Tulane, you look at the shooting numbers, they did not play well. Aaliyah Gregory had a bad night. She was 2 of 11 from the field. Zy Lewis was 3 of 11, 1 of 6 from three-point range. She was the only player to try a 3. It was really the interior players. Jocelyn Massey was 4 of 8 from the field. She had 8 rebounds, 9 points. Tolu Makore, 3 of 4 from the field, 7 points. But the leading scorer for UCF tonight was Fifi Endor. She was 7 of 8 from the field. She had a big layup on the fast break late that sort of put the game away for UCF. So 14 plus 8 rebounds for Fifi. And then KK Wright had a good game coming off the bench, 4 of 5 from the field. So and 10 points. So she was the second leading scorer on the team. And as a team, UCF shot 47%, but held Tulane to just 35% on their home floor. Tulane shot I thought was the difference. Tulane shot 4 of 21 from 3-point range. UCF only 1 of 6, which goes back to what Coach Abe was telling us at the start of the season, right? She wants to pound the ball inside, and she had the people to do it tonight against what I thought was an undersized Tulane team. And to get this win at 8, to be 18-9, and I'm pulling up our schedule to finish out. We talked about the men's team having, sort of a gut check in those last 2 games. The women have their last 2 games at home. They play SMU on Saturday in a few days, and then they finish up Monday. Senior night rather is against Temple. And in check of the standings, like you were saying, Eric, Temple right now is second in the league at 11-3 overall. And what was the other thing? SMU. They're pretty far down in the league. They're 5-8, fourth from the bottom. So the SMU game is certainly winnable. Temple game is going to be tough, but like I said, you have that game at home, kind of like the men's have. Have that Cincinnati game, the toughest game of the last 2 at home. So UCF right now 4th place in the league, like you were saying, Eric, and they would if that holds up, the women's tournament works the same way as the men. They get the bye, the 4 and 5 seeds get the bye to the quarterfinal, and the 5 right now is Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean,
although Tulane is right there. Actually, Tulane dropped the game, so they're
7-8. Tulane is 2-8. Tulane is 7-8.
Right,
Cincinnati,
so Cincinnati kind of has that game in hand in the loss column right now, at least at the moment.
But I mean, Cincinnati still got to play Temple this weekend. That's a big game for them. The thing about Cincinnati, I mean, UCF got a gift, in my opinion, with respect to, because Cincinnati, a team that you and I have both seen up close, lost to East Carolina to give UCF this 1-game cushion, because UCF and Cincinnati were tied, and Cincinnati lost to an East Carolina team that had lost 12 in a row. I just finished watching
the least consistent team in this conference this year.
With so much talent, they got talent too. I mean, there's
like
Shanice
world
Johnson
beaters one night, and then they're awful.
Yeah. And so UCF has a 1-game lead over Cincinnati for that 4th spot. Now let's even dream a little further. This is a bit of a long shot, but follow me on this. All right. So UCF's 8-6 in 4th place. USF is 10-4. Okay, they're in 3rd. USF, you've seen in person as well, by the way, for the record.
Right.
Will play this weekend at home. Their last home game is against Tulsa. They will be the favorites. They should win that game, but USF's been scuffling a little bit. Here's a scenario. If UCF were to win their last 2 games, that puts them at 10-6. Let's say USF gets upset by Tulsa. All right. Well, I've seen Tulsa do this. Tulsa upset UCF earlier this year. They can hit the 3. That would drop USF to 10-5. You want to guess who USF finishes the regular season with?
UConn?
Yep, at UConn.
Now,
so
let me tell you why else that also I also find that interesting. All right, let's say if the top 4 stays the way they are and they all advance to, say, the conference semifinals, then you have UCF playing UConn in the semis, because they would be 1 against 4, and then Temple against USF in the 2-3. If UCF somehow gets past USF, if they somehow jump USF in the standings, then they get to avoid UConn until they would get to the American Championship game. So that would be a really interesting scenario, wouldn't it?
And that's the scenario that would have to happen, which would be USF loses out and UCF would have to win out it's long shot because, again, USF, I think, you have seen them up close. I have not, but I've seen them on television. They should bounce back against Tulsa, having a week off after the loss to Temple at home. I'd like to think they're going to win their last home game. But there is some added pressure to them because if they lose that game to Tulsa, they're going to go to UConn. And then if they lose that game and UCF wins out, then USF drops to the 4 seed and UCF moves up to the 3, which would be insane to even say that. But like I said, it's a long shot. But hey, you never know. Stranger things have happened. It's just remarkable. We're even talking about the 4 seed. Now we talked about earlier about Coach Dawkins and his chances for Coach of the Year. I feel like here's the interesting one. Do you just give it to Gino just automatically? That's the one. They could just do that.
I think you got to have 2 awards, right? You give one to Gino. And then you give another one to the non-UConn Coach of the Year. I mean, probably they won 101 games in a row.
Right.
Like we're talking about cross sports. Across sports, that's remarkable. I think was it the Penn State volleyball team? I should have known that. The Penn State volleyball team a few years ago, and they won 4 straight national titles, and they won something like 90-something matches in a row. I have to go back and look at it, but UConn's won 101 games in a row. It's crazy.
So we assume Gino gets the Coach of the Year. If it wasn't Gino, because they want to give it to somebody different, it's probably between Abe and the Temple coach as far as who would get the Coach of the Year. Because I think what she's done is a phenomenal job. This team to even approach this amount of wins, and I think this is the thing, and we didn't even bring this up with Dawkins. It's basically the same team as last year.
Yeah.
For both of these programs. That's what's crazy. They was basically the same roster. The only added player on the women's side was KK Wright, the freshman, the local kid. The men's side, with Banyard, I guess, who's the new guy? And, so in other words, it's the same. This women's team was in single digits in wins.
# coaching matters.
And let me just say this, because I've obviously recently had the privilege of called 2 UCF women's basketball games for the American Digital Network, which I've always I've worked with Despina Barton and stuff like that. Great crew. As you know, Jeff, you worked with the same crew, Drew Vincent and Scott Rainey, all those guys. One of the things that I have the luxury of is I get shoot around. I get to go to shoot around, for example, to get prepped for the broadcast. And I've been very impressed with Coach Abe and just being attention to detail with these kids and pointing out the mistakes right away and correcting them. And really, she has a way of keeping them at the attention and knowing that, hey, I'm going to be hard on you, but at the same time, I'm also going to hug you when, if you do well, and there's that balancing act. And I've just been very impressed by the job she's done. She's done a phenomenal job with this team, and to pick up another big win and to be at the top half of this league. And again, I want to point out what we just talked about a few minutes ago. This is a league that's going to get at least 3 teams into the NCAA tournament, maybe 4. So it's not like, hey, this is a soft league. This is a good league. This is a great year for the American Conference. And for her and UCF to accomplish this, remarkable. I'm blown away by it. Just remarkable. And again, I'm going to keep saying this every time I mention it. Credit to Danny White. Who I would say has hit 2 home run hires with the basketball programs.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought that it went back to even to see, how well UCF. I know this is going to sound strange, but the way that they played against UConn in that game at home, even though they lost the game, and UConn did UConn things for that to happen, they forced them defensively to move into a zone. They made UConn really have to think, and you just knew that you knew that that the difference obviously was the talent gap. There's just a talent gap between UCF and UConn right now. But if Coach Abe is able to recruit, as I'm sure she hopes she does, who knows? Who knows what happens in the next 3-4 years if they get better. By the way, another little note I wanted to make about UConn, just to show how impressive they've won. It was 101 games in a row, and I mentioned the Penn State volleyball team. They won. Let's see from 2000. They won 4 consecutive national championships from 2007 to 10. And under head coach Russ Rose, they won 109 matches in a row. So that, I think, is, there's no one else in basketball that they're chasing after. I mean, they've obviously long beaten the UCLA men's streak. Now they're chasing after streaks in sports other than basketball. So they're chasing down the Penn State women's volleyball streak. Ask Todd Dagenais about that and how good those Penn State teams were, by the way, under Russ Rose, because he knows Russ pretty well from his days in the Big Ten. And that was, I mean, for them to do for that team to do what they did is pretty remarkable. And so to see what UConn has been doing is phenomenal. But, it's easy to obscure for the headlines that they make, to obscure what, teams like UCF have been doing in the American this year. So two games to go.
Right. And a couple things. UCF, obviously, women's just like the men, trying to play themselves into a postseason.
There is the tournament, by the way, also in Connecticut, should be mentioned. Conference
tournament, yes, that's at the Mohegan Sun.
Yeah,
by the way,
Uncasville, Connecticut, at the Mohegan Sun Casino. It isn't. It is. Yes, NCAA is holding this in a casino.
Well, I mean, they're playing it. I mean, the Connecticut, the WNBA franchise played their home games there and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's not. I don't think there's stuff like that. It's not like there's spreads for women's basketball that they're concerned about or anything like that.
I'm just saying, how the NCAA is about gambling and whatnot.
Well,
they're playing a conference tournament in a casino.
I've heard it's very nice. It
is. It's gorgeous.
I haven't been there directly, but
and then the men's team, the men's game obviously is in Hartford. But go ahead.
The XL Center, correct. But the women's team, based on how they do here, they finish here in the conference. They got a shot not only to get 20 wins, but again, just like the men, get into a postseason as far as maybe a WNIT. Okay.
Yes.
Or I believe there's a WBI, which is the CBI version for the women. Not as but the point is, think about this. UCF women's basketball, the last time they made the postseason was the 2011 NCAA tournament. But really the only time this program's ever made postseason is when they win the automatic bid in a conference tournament, whether it be back in the day of the ASUN or Conference USA. They've never actually made a postseason unless they won the automatic bid. So if this team were to earn a postseason bid in a league, I think that speaks volumes, and a tremendous credit to the players and the coach for buying in. And they've gotten better, because early in the year there was a question of inconsistency, the up and down. They're not used to winning. Now they've bought in more. And back to this Tulane win, impressive to have won the way they did without Aaliyah Gregory, who was due for an off day. Let's give the kid a break. She just, the American Player of the Week, has been on an amazing roll. I think she's been averaging close to around 30 points a game during this winning the previous 4 wins. She just hit over 1,000-point mark in her career. She had 27 in the win against East Carolina, 34 in the win against USF. That's been playing at a super high level. So she was due for a down game, but I think it speaks volumes that her and Zy Lewis both had off games and they found a way to win. That would not have been the case, I think, a month ago.
I agree, and credit to the big people for stepping it up and picking up the slack. That's what they've been looking for. That I think that Coach Abe has tried to set that up for them for them to be able to do that, and they finally have been able to do it.
And let's give credit to one guy outside of the program that saw this coming, and he said it, and you were there, and he said it at the time, and I think people kind of scoffed at it. He's like, he's just saying that to be nice. Right? Gino Auriemma kind of
Gino was right. Gino was right.
And that's the thing that blows me away. He said he thinks this team was going to win a lot of games. They're going to give a lot of problems to a lot of teams, and he was right. And it's just remarkable. And hopefully people can go out there this weekend for their home games. If not, you said the Saturday game against SMU, and then the Monday night one's a big one. Temple's a top 25 team. We'll see if they stay in the top 20.
I would hope that people come out for that game on Monday night, because that team deserves to see that team deserves a good crowd for that game as well. So we got 2 senior nights coming up: women's basketball and men's basketball. It's my least favorite time of the year. I can't stand senior night on any sport. But
wow.
I really, and it's because it's so emotional, and it's, to me, it's sad, and because you hate saying goodbye, but and then it's anticlimactic. It's like you have the ceremony, and all right, well, we got to go play a game now, and then everyone's a total basket case before the game, and it's just
some Some people do it afterwards.
Yeah, but Todd Dagenais does this. He has the senior ceremony after the senior match.
Sure.
Which I think
Renee
is smart.
does the same thing. Yeah, Renee does the same thing. Yes.
I think that's smart because you kind of hold off on the emotional aspect of it until after the game is over. Which I think is a smart thing, because then you can it's hard. It is really hard because you know how emotional it is. It's been 4 years there, or sometimes 5. So.
Right. No question about that. Real quick, somebody brought this up at the arena when I was at the women's game. For UConn, would you rather get them early in the conference tournament or get them in the final? Some there's a theory out there. You get them early, maybe you can sneak up on them in the semis or something like that. Whereas in the final, they know that hey, right here we're playing for a championship. We're ready to lock and load. Not suggesting that there's a big difference, but
If I were a team like USF who does consider themselves, like they feel like they're ready to challenge UConn, or at least they're close to being ready to challenge UConn, I would say, I want them early. I want them in the quarters. When they're kind of getting a little rusty, they'll look at us and be like, all right, we'll knock out this team in the first round, and then you kind of cause a little havoc and get them out of sync. On the other hand, if you're a team that might maybe your expectations might not be as high, if you are a UCF, I would prefer to have them in the championship game so I could win as many games leading into that game and get hot. And then who knows, maybe the heat continues, right? Because I'm also padding my resume for the postseason after that. Maybe I don't get to the NCAA, but you're right. Maybe I get to the WNIT or the WBI, and I would want to win as many games as possible before I had to face the juggernaut that is UConn right now. So, all right. So let's. So by the way, women's tournament is next week. By the way,
wow.
At already March the 3rd is when the American Athletic Conference Championship starts at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, which is actually pretty close. It's just on the Connecticut side of the Connecticut-Rhode Island border, if you're looking, and on the southern part, not too far from the ocean. So we'll have some updates for you on that, and hopefully a preview coming up next week. So, all right, let's take a quick breather and stick around. When we come back, we'll talk a little UCF baseball. They're getting off to a start. They're getting off to a hot start this season. Also talk softball and clean up some loose ends. We got some mailbag action here for the first time on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Stick around. We're back after this.
Hello, Night Nation. I'm Andrew Fegley.
And I'm Trey Strelko. Where are we? This isn't our usual spot.
It looks like we've landed in the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of those guys.
Nightline has UCF sports covered.
Week in and week out, we bring you interviews with newsmakers and in-depth analysis of UCF sports.
Subscribe to our weekly podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Be sure to subscribe to Nightline on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter at UCF_Nightline.
Trace, can we go back to the 1148 studios now and start working on our next all-new Nightline?
How do we get out of here? Go Knights!
Charge on.
Now back to you guys in the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
And welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez with you. Let's switch gears over to baseball. The Greg Lovelady era is underway in an impressive fashion as the Knights are 4-0 to start the season. They sweep the Siena Saints in the season opening weekend, 3-game set. Got off to one hell of a start too in the first game, Eric. They defeat Siena 17-6, scoring 10 runs in the first inning, and did not look back. 21 hits for the Knights on the evening, getting the victory for where the heck is it? There it is. Robbie Howell did get the victory to start the season for UCF. He gave up 3 runs on 5 hits. Only one of them was earned, however. And Coach Lovelady talked about his bullpen. He used, and that he was not going to be afraid to use it. He used 5 pitchers out of the bullpen. Andrew Roloff ended up finishing it off. Obviously not a safe situation, but the Knights knocked off Siena on opening night. Well attended. Alumni weekend. We'll talk about that in a second. But then they beat Siena 3-0 on Saturday and 7-2 on Sunday. Then had to come back and play an in-state team, UNF, out of the A Sun on Tuesday. And I thought this was pretty impressive. This is a close game. 3-2 was the final. UNF jumped out to the 1-0 lead in the second. Knights tied it in the fourth and then went ahead 2-1 in the fifth. Fell down in the seventh, but then answered to take the lead in the bottom of the seventh, and then slammed the door on UNF in the final 2 innings to get the win, 3-2. It was Cryle who got the sacrifice fly to actually clinch the game for UCF. So they played a little small ball in that game, and it certainly worked out. So Ryan Cryle, the DH, batting in the 2 spot, was able to take care of business for the Knights in that one. Winning pitcher for UCF in that game was Jordan Sheffs out of the bullpen through 2/3 to get the win. Chris Williams got the start, gave up 5 hits, but only 1 run. He only threw 4, so he didn't get the win in that one. But, hey, 4-0, not too bad to start things for the Greg Lovelady era, huh?
Yeah, I mean, they took care of business of Siena, which they should and did. North Florida's a pretty good team out of the A's son there, Smoke Laval, the head coach there. So they got a well-coached team there. So I think that's a good, solid win. It was interesting listening to Lovelady. In fact, after the game, right now he talked about, and I agree with him so far from what I've seen, I think right now the pitching right now has kind of carried this team. I still think they're still trying to figure themselves out on offensively. And as you hear from Coach Lovelady, he tends to feel that's kind of how he feels about his team right now.
I mean, it shows that we're tough. I mean, that we're able to compete and that we're not going to get down. And, I think it's easy when, we get the lead and then we give it back to just get frustrated. But we don't. Luke Hamlin does a phenomenal job of getting a hustle single. Just beats the pitcher to the bag. Ends up scoring the game-winning run. Ryan Cryle had a phenomenal day offensively, just a bunch of quality at bat. Moving runners over, gets the sack fly, the game-winning RBI. So just really proud. Again, we're scuffling a little bit offensively right now. We'll be better. I'm not worried about it. But the pitchers are carrying us right now. But we're scoring runs when we need to, manufacturing some runs. We left some runs on the board today. I thought we had a chance to blow the game open, and we didn't. But when we need the big hit or the big sack fly or somehow move a runner, we've been doing that. And that's what you got to do sometimes. And with the pitchers, the way we're throwing the ball right now, that's how we got to win games.
Yeah, so there you have it, Jeff. I think it's so early in college baseball, especially. It's a grind. I think I liked how Robbie Howell threw an opening night. I like how some of the arms have looked. I get a sense, too, that I think Lovelady's going to have roles for these guys.
Yeah, Bryce Tucker got 2 saves in those first 4 games.
He's looked very good. And I get a sense that Lovelady will trust his guys and trust them in the bullpen, whereas I think that was one of the criticisms of Coach Rooney is that he lost confidence in certain guys really quickly and would only trust 1 or 2 guys out of the bullpen. It's tough to win that way in college baseball. I think Lovelady's got a longer leash, and I think this pitching staff will be better than maybe we think they are based on that. The question's going to be offensively, and I think they're still trying to figure out some things. And Lovelady even has said he is not a guy that's going to throw out the same lineup every game. There's going to be always new lineups and different guys in. So I think a lot of guys will have their opportunities, and it'll be interesting who steps in and who kind of takes that next step. So but it's very early, very early. I don't really take too much from Siena because I don't think they're very good. I don't know what we'll learn from the Manhattan series, but
UCF, by the way, 51-4 all time against Siena.
Yeah. But look, they got to take care of business, and obviously, a lot of people I think are going to pay a lot closer attention next week, Jeff, when they have a home with Florida, and that'll be big. Going to Gainesville and then hosting Florida. I think that's when that's going to be when the casual baseball fan will tune in and I think maybe see, okay, what does this team have? And what are where we're at and where kind of it means, even though it's a midweek. And I think people have to remember it's a midweek. Midweek baseball games are a little overblown sometimes in college baseball because you're not throwing your weekend rotation guys, which are normally your top 3 pitchers and stuff like that. But nonetheless, look, confidence is a key. If this team can play well and keep winning, it builds confidence. And I think that's the big thing here is about building confidence and that mojo to get these guys, believing that they can accomplish what their internal goals are.
A couple notes also from the weekend. Joe Sheridan appeared in 3 games and actually pitched pretty well for UCF out of the pen. Juan Pimentel looked really good in his start. 5 1/3, gave up 2 runs, no runs on 2 hits and struck out 4, walked only 1. So that was encouraging to see too. So yeah, you obviously, these are the games that you should win. You got these teams coming down from up north. For example, Siena this weekend. I know UNF doesn't really count as that, but Siena in particular, this coming weekend they got a 3-game set against Manhattan. Another team coming from New York down here. So Siena came down from Albany, Manhattan came down from New York. Friday, Saturday, Sunday for that, and first game 6:30, and noon respectively. First pitches coming up, and then of course Tuesday and Wednesday. You mentioned that home and home against Florida. That's going to be big. Before you have another 3-game weekend set against another team from the state of New York. This is Stony Brook coming into town. March 13th. So we're loading up on those northeastern teams here.
Yeah, but we're not going to scoff on Stony Brook. There's the history.
That's true. The
2012 regional, very, very, to me, as I've said, maybe one of the more painful sporting events in UCF really athletic history when you think about it. A win away from advancing to your first ever super regional in Miami, in the Coral Gables regional, and then lose twice back-to-back to Stony Brook, who then ended up upsetting LSU and going to the World Series. So
yeah, they were in the College World Series. People forget that, how good Stony Brook is, or was just recently.
And still are, yeah. So that's not a that's a Stony Brook's different than Siena and Manhattan. With all due respect to Manhattan and Siena, Stony Brook's a little different deal there. So I don't want to put them in the same category from that, even though they are Northeast. But man, obviously they are a good baseball program, and I have a feeling that regional will be brought up by the fan base and the message boards. And
Last
all that.
Last year they were a 500 team, though, Stony Brook.
Well, they lost some graduations from the But
that College World Series year they went 52-15. That
unbelievable.
Was in 2012. But they that's as good as they were. They've kind of fallen off a little bit. It's still a solid team out of the American East. But like you said, don't scoff at that. They might be good again. Central Michigan also is another team that's coming down from up north.
A team that's beat UCF in the past too, recently.
Yeah,
so
that's true. And Florida State, of course, on the back-to-back. Both those games at home, by the way, Tuesday and Wednesday, March 7th through 8th. So that's in between the Stony Brook and Central Michigan. So things are going to really ramp up for UCF baseball here in this non-conference part of the schedule before the conference opener at the end of March. So, but hey, 4-0, really good start, and congrats to Coach Lovelady. By the way, alumni weekend this past weekend at UCF baseball, and an old familiar face was there, wasn't he?
Yeah, we had Jay Bergman.
Yeah,
the great baseball legend,
the old man.
Was there through the alumni. There is over 50, from what I understand, 50 former players going back to the 80s, 90s that played for Coach Bergman, even to the 2000s. They were there. It was a huge turnout. In fact, Coach Lovelady talked about what a great turnout it was and how great it was to see people that care about the program being there in support.
It was awesome. I mean, great. We had over 50 alums in there, and so it was a lot of fun. Just good to see the people that care about the program, and obviously an icon here. So it was good. It was fun for me.
Jeff, I think this was great, and a great credit to Coach Lovelady on this. From what I understand, he reached out to the alumni, and I think he, coming from the University of Miami program and playing for Jim Morris, but knowing how Jim Morris had Ron Frazier and the tradition of the Miami program, and how all the former Hurricane players still support that baseball program. I think Greg Lovelady wants that, the same with UCF. And I think a smart move by him to reach out to Coach Bergman. I wouldn't be surprised that when he reached out to former alumni that they brought up Jay Bergman, because that's been a topic for a lot of the former alumni. Jeff, you and I were there at the Hall of Fame ceremony in 2015. That was the Hall of Fame class that Stephanie Best, the softball legend, got inducted. Asante Samuel got inducted. What was it, the 78 volleyball team that won the national title?
78 volleyball team, yep.
Was inducted. And Dee Brown was inducted as a baseball player. And Clay Tipner inducted him. And do you remember who both of them brought up frequently during their speeches?
Oh, it was Jay.
Yeah. And so I know that a lot of the alumni and those players, some of them have, quite frankly, not been around the program because Bergman hasn't been around because how things ended. And so it was great to see Jay there, and I think it was a great olive branch to invite him to come out. I mean, I think it's the first time that Jay Bergman's been at a UCF baseball game since he left the program back in 2008. So it tells you how long ago it is. And it was great. I saw some photos and things like that, and he looks great still. And I think that's great. I'm a big believer that your tradition matters in all your college sports, and especially in those like college baseball. And I think Lovelady gets that.
Especially for a school that is as young as ours. You need to really work hard to get that, to get, like you said, that tradition, to move that forward. And I think it's really good. I'm glad that we embrace that.
And I think from a men's sports standpoint, baseball is the best traditional sport that they have, with due respect to football. Baseball's been to regional finals going back to the 90s. They've been up, they were a perennial NCAA tournament team and winning conference championships and so forth. And so that they have great tradition with, I believe Mike Muroth played in the major leagues, and you've had other guys that have been successful.
Chad Mottola was a long-time player in the pros.
Yeah, exactly.
Funny story about him. I was
Drew Butera most recently.
Drew Butera, caught the final out of the World Series. Mm-hmm. Funny story about Chad Mottola, if I can get to that. I would love to. I hope that I could. He's actually coaching in the Blue Jays system now. But when he was playing with the Syracuse Chiefs, and he was up there, the AAA team. That's an affiliate of the Blue Jays, at least at the time they were, and he was. Like literally, maybe a few dozen people in Syracuse would come to these games. But one night, I was up there in grad school at the time, and I was like, and I see Chad out there, and I knew that he was a UCF player. Hey, Chad, let's go Knights! And like he perked up for a second and kind of looked around, like, who said that? And then I was able to say, hey, I was from UCF, but that was pretty cool. That we got kind of a UCF moment up there, up in freaking Syracuse, New York, of all places. I think there was still snow that was up on the up outside of the outfield fences out there when we were there. But that was a good time. And you need guys like that who know what it was like back in the day before they built that ballpark. And I think that makes it just makes a tremendous difference, because it also shows the young players, like, you guys are following the footsteps of people who really who set a pretty high standard for UCF, especially in baseball. And I think that matters tremendously, and it gives them something to really look forward to. Like, this is going to be you guys one day. So what sort of legacy do you want to leave? And I really applaud Coach Lovelady for that, and I know you do too.
I do. I am a big fan of that, and I think he's won some people over with that. I expect it's not. I think a lot of the alumni is going to have his back. It's probably the biggest win he's had so far. That's even bigger than the 4 wins he's had so far. I think that was significant, because I am a believer in embracing the history and the tradition, and I think sometimes we all get lost in what's next and what the future is, and sometimes you just got to look at the past and have the past help you get to the future. And I think that was great. Great moment. I know a lot of people that went to that were excited, and I've talked to some people that are probably the most excited they've been about the program in a few years. So we'll hope, we'll try to, that was a positive sign. So I very pleased there. I thought that was significant, and good job by all parties involved.
Credit to Scott. Forgive me if it's Scott Lubier or Lubier, who tweeted out a photo of Coach Lovelady and Coach Bergman from the UCF baseball offices. It's on the UCFsports.com message board. Lubier Scott is the Twitter handle. He sent that out. Really nice picture. Really, and that's good to see. So.
And what's great about the Bergman is I feel he has, and why tradition is so big is everybody is kind of connected to him in some ways.
Right.
I mean,
he was here for so long.
How many years did you broadcast baseball when you were a student?
4 years. All 4 years.
What years were they?
It was 02, 3, 4, and 5.
So you were there for those last couple great teams, like the 04 team, for example. That was the one that got to the regional final in Tallahassee, lost to Stephen Drew in Florida State. that year. But that was a strong UCF team. So you got to see some of his that was probably his last best team he had in 2004. In 2005, they just missed the NCAA tournament. They lost in the ASUN semis in Tulane. That was the year Stetson won the tournament. But there were some good teams back then. I called games from 2006 to 2008, so I was at the end there where it started to kind of dip a little bit. But I've been going to baseball games since Jay Bergman Field opened in February of 2001. And so that's kind of my point. I mean, Chris Tuno, I know, for example, who was the SID back then at UCF Baseball. He's now a media relations guy for the St. Louis Cardinals. He made all the way to that opener just to see Coach Bergman, for example. And there's many other stories like that. So I just think that's a pretty cool deal. And there's something about that. And you can only get that in college. There's something about that, you come back to campus 10, 20 years later, and there's a connection there that it's hard to duplicate, isn't it?
Well, I mean, you can say the same thing for, obviously we weren't athletes, but, when we have this is why we do this podcast. It's because we have such a deep connection to our alma mater.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine. And we were just sports nerds, screaming into antiquated microphones that we got off of Amazon and eBay. I mean, imagine if we were actually athletes. The connection that you build with those guys that you're there around all the time for 4 years. I mean, I can only imagine what that must have been like. So, that was yeah. I mean, those teams, particularly that was an 2004 team that was really good and just heartbreaking the way that sort of finished out. But tremendous credit to Coach Lovelady for bringing that back. And I wish I had the chance. I was away for the weekend at that NASA social event, by the way, which was a pretty interesting experience. I wish I had the chance to be there for those games, but one of these days I'll make my way down for one of those alumni events, and I want to see Coach Bergman and some of the other guys that are down there. Remember Matt Fox, Drew Butera, some of those other guys down there that would have been fun to see. Clay Tippner, of course, would have been fun to see. So, 4-0 for UCF baseball, and they got 3 coming up against Manhattan this weekend. On the other diamond, softball, Eric Lopez. Mm-hmm. Mary Dutter Classic out in California. UCF splits the 2 games that they played out in Palm Springs. Bad rain in Palm Springs, California. Well, now listen, everyone thinks about California and they think about, they've had a bad drought, everything. Well, the drought's now over. But bear in mind, Palm Springs is not in everyone thinks Palm Springs is in Los Angeles. It's not. Palm Springs is in the desert, in the middle of the state, basically. In the southern half of California. But you go look on a map. Palm Springs it is a desert out there, and there was rain that ruined the tournament basically for everyone who was there. But UCF did not get to play Cal or Loyola Marymount. They won. They split their 2 games. First game they split on that Friday against Cal Poly. They won that game in 9 innings, 2-1. A big win for the nights before they lost to UCLA 1-0. I think it was number 1 UCLA. Is that right?
It's top 6.
Top 6. Okay, but in the Cal Poly game, Jasmine Esparza with the walk-off winner to win the game for UCF, and hey, that's a long trip against a really good team, basically not in their backyard, but in their state certainly. And Aaliyah White went the full 9, gave up 1 run, 3 hits, walked 5, but struck out 5. And that's a nice little RPI win, don't you think, against Cal Poly?
Yes. Jasmine Esparza, by the way, who hit the walk-off hit, California girl.
Yeah, that's right.
So with the walk-off hit. It's a good win against a good Cal Poly team.
That's why Coach goes out to California every year.
Well, here's the thing. That was the first win ever in the state of California in those tournaments. All these years they've been going up there, and including last year when they went to Mary Nutter. They've been going to San Diego for tournaments. They've never won a game until that game. That was their first win in the state of California. So that was a milestone. And that's something Aaliyah White can build on. Her first big win as a Knight will be a memorable one. And I'll tell you, Jeff, she's been tremendous. Her last 2 games have been her best games. She's getting better and better for each game that she throws. And then the UCLA game, a 1-0 UCLA win. Manemi Calixto, the senior, I think threw her best game of her tenured as a Black and Gold member. She was phenomenal in that game, shutting down a dynamic UCLA offense that's got multiple players on that lineup that are Player of the Year candidates.
Yeah.
I was impressed with the pitching from those two. That is significant moving forward for both of them. They came away from that tournament with a lot of confidence. Interesting how they will fare when they go to Tuscaloosa now. They got to go to Tuscaloosa for the Bama Bash. Mm-hmm. They're going to be playing Alabama twice in that tournament. They're going to be playing Texas Tech out of the Big 12, where Coach Gillespie actually coached there before UCF.
That's the answer to the trivia question. What was Coach Gillespie's last job before UCF? 16 years ago, there. Texas Tech.
He coached there. And then they've got Gardner Webb in that tournament for a couple games.
Old A Sun foes.
Yeah, so I'll be curious to see how White and Calixto can build that momentum going against Alabama. I had a chance to – I was watching Alabama play. They were playing North Florida prior to we started this podcast. So, and they're a very loaded, young, talented team. Interesting to see how those two pitchers, though, handle that Alabama offense in that venue in Alabama, which was a beautiful stadium. But I'm excited because that was one of the big questions going in is who's going to pitch, and you have all this youth pitching wise. I think the pitching's going to be fine. It's just can that offense come around with so many young hitters, and when does the light bulb kind of trigger for them? I think that's going to be the question for them during this trip and during the first half of this year. But I think a lot of excitement of the future with Aaliyah White. And I think excitement about the immediate future with Calixto stepping up big time in that UCLA game. And I think if both of them can take that with them now moving forward the rest of the year, I think UCF's got a shot to maybe have the best pitching staff in the conference, which is huge anytime. You can't win in softball, obviously, without pitching. So I think that's the big encouragement coming away from that trip, as short as it was the pitching. And by the way, is there anything weirder? What's weirder, do you think? Okay. In the last calendar year, UCF's had a game rained out in California, of all places.
In the desert in California.
In the desert. Or the year in 2016 in April, UCF had a softball game snowed out. Of course, that was in Connecticut. But still,
I would say rain in the desert is a less likely event than snow in Connecticut.
True, but still bizarre to have, because that was a first for UCF softball. They've never been snowed out. Like they were last year. I was up there. I remember that. I remember we woke up and it was like, hey, everybody's heard snow. And, of course, we all did what we all do.
Everyone go outside.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. Oh, the game's canceled? Great. Let's play with
2 minutes later, oh, crap, it's cold out.
Yeah, it was a very unique experience having been a part of that. But, I mean, for me personally, that was the first time I've ever seen snow. So,
you've never seen snow before?
No. Never seen snow until that trip. It was hilarious. And it was funny, too, because... Must have been
hilarious. I regret the fact that I wasn't there to see it.
Oh, it was hilarious. And we're kind of all blown away. Like people that like myself that have not seen snow, we're like, wow, there's a lot of snow on the ground. And the people that have seen snow before, it's like, that's just like a couple of inches. It's no big deal.
Yeah, exactly. That's what happens. Is like, you call this snow, this is just a dusting. Yeah, we don't even get the snowblower out for this.
Correct. So, yeah, I remember that. We got snowed out. That was a weird weekend. We only got one game in. That was the game where Coach Gillespie got her milestone 700th win of her coaching career. Shelby Turnier got her 70th win of her career. And then that was a 1-0 win on a Friday. And then the Saturday games got washed out. And then Sunday got snowed out. And it cost, really, UCF the regular season title because they couldn't make those games up, really. So, but it was very unique, very unique. And then now getting rained out in the desert, I mean, the odds are just not, very long shot, like you said. It's just very bizarre. But let's say hopefully they can build that momentum going into Alabama against a very good field. Great place, great host. Patrick Murphy and Alabama do a great job. UCF, of course, beat Alabama last year. When they were at UCF in a first ever top 25 matchup at the complex. Much different teams, though, from that one. So, obviously, we'll see what Alabama's going to be ready for that. So, it'll be a big challenge for the girls.
So, by the way, quick question for you. I mean, is it that whole thing about confidence that you mentioned? I mean, is that really real? Like, you lose a game against UCLA. I mean, all these players, they all know about UCLA, how good UCLA, not just was, but is. Lisa Fernandez going back in the day. Is that really a confidence builder for a young team like that, or do they come away from that game saying, "Dadgummit, we should have beaten them"?
Both. I think it's both. You could be both. I think you could be frustrated that you could have won, but I think you have confidence because, like, wow, we could have beaten that team. And I think for Manemi in particular, it's a big confidence booster as a pitcher. I'll never forget Mackenzie Audis in her freshman year beat Florida. It was a night game at the complex, packed house. She shut out the Gators. They were ranked 3rd in the country. It was a 2-0 win, huge win. And I asked her about that afterwards. And the big thing the reason she felt confident going up into that Florida game, she said she felt confident because earlier in the year, UCF played in a tournament in San Diego, and they played teams like Washington, and they played UCLA. She pitched well against both of those teams. She didn't get the win, but she pitched great, and she said she gained confidence because she was able to shut down those lineups, so she felt good when she was going up against Florida. So I do think it pays. That's why Coach Gillespie likes to play those schedule the way she does, because kids can build confidence on that. So for Manemi individually, even though she didn't get the win against UCLA, holding UCLA to 1 run, she's not going to see a lineup as good as UCLA probably the rest of the year, especially in conference. Yeah. So she has that confidence builder now. Anytime she steps in the circle, hey, I have the ability to pitch great because I did this against UCLA, so I'm capable of that. For Aaliyah, it's the same thing. Hey, I'm capable of pitching very well. And I think for the group is, we could have beaten UCLA. If we can just do this and this better, we got a chance. So, yeah, I think you can get confidence, but at the same time be frustrated as a young team. Yeah, so I think it's a little bit of both, but I think it can pay off down the road.
All right. Well, here's hoping that it does, especially with the tournament coming up at Alabama. 2 against Gardner-Webb, 2 against Bama, 1 against Texas Tech Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then they're at Florida Gulf Coast down at Fort Myers Wednesday, March the 1st, before they have another home tournament with 2 against Providence and 1 against Florida Gulf Coast. The UCF Invitational, March 3rd, 4th, and 5th. All right. Switching gears. We got a couple other things we got to catch you up on. Men's golf finished tied for 7th at the Gator Invitational. Donnie Trosper finished in the top 20 for UCF in that tournament. Women's golf finished up the All-State Sugar Bowl Classic in New Orleans, finishing tied for 9th with Houston, by the way. Ashley Holder was the top finisher for UCF there. She finished tied for 5th in the individual medalist standings. Stanford was the team winner, and Arizona's Haley Moore was the individual winner in that. So I want to give a shout out to UCF golf there, both women's and men's. This is great news out of track and field, Eric Lopez, which we didn't acknowledge before, but we need to acknowledge now. Junior Rosie Chamberlain for UCF track and field has set a new school record in the 800 meters. She did so in Nashville at the Music City Challenge. She finished 7th overall, but her time in the 800 meters, 2:05.77. So 2 minutes and 5.77 seconds. So that's pretty fast. That's ridiculous. So congrats to her on that. Let's see, and also we wanted to give a shout out to Janae Bellamy, who won the finals of the 60 meter. This is an indoor event that was in Nashville. She won the 60 meters with a 7.34. So congratulations to her for that. And UCF finished 3rd in the 4x400 relay with a time of 3:42.48. Quick update for you on tennis. UCF defeated women's tennis defeated Florida Gulf Coast 6-1 last Friday at the USTA National Campus. Their record right now for the season is 8-1. Remember, they don't have a conference they don't have a conference season in tennis. They do have a conference championship at the end of the year. But UCF women's tennis is off to a good start at 8-1 overall, and they have won. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in a row. And they've got Florida Atlantic coming up on Friday, and then Liberty on Saturday. And then men's tennis is at 6-1. They knocked off FAU themselves on Sunday at the USTA National Complex, 6-1 there. Coach Roddick's guys are, like I said, 6-1. They've won 3 in a row, and they've got TCU, another Big 12 opponent. Look at that. TCU coming in this Saturday, the 25th. Or no, not coming in. They're going to Fort Worth, to take on TCU. And then they're going to Dallas to face SMU, and then they're at Baylor. So they got this this is tough. 3 Big 12 matches, or 3 matches in the state of Texas, 2 against Big 12 teams in 3 days. February the 25th, Saturday against TCU. Then that following day, that Sunday against SMU, and then the following Monday at Baylor in Waco. So, and that's before they come home for a March 5th match against Davidson. So good luck to men's tennis on that road trip out to Texas. Hopefully they can bring back some W's back from, I'm sure Coach Roddick knows a thing or two about winning in the state of Texas, him being from the next state north, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I don't think it's an accident. He's got those 2 Big 12 teams. Remember, he opened the season at home against Texas Tech. So he's already played. He already beat Texas Tech. So obviously with his ties, having been the head coach at Oklahoma, I'm sure he was able to. It makes sense. You get kind of 3 quality teams, too. SMU is very good in the American, one of the top teams in tennis. So to get quality games, that'll be a good test for them after being home for a while, to see how they handle being on the road and see where they stand after that trip.
I feel one of the things that I actually miss about my time as a video producer is giving credit to golf and tennis and some of those sports, cross country. I had a great time covering track and field when we had track and field meets at UCF too. That was always fun because I'd be running. I basically had free reign to run around the track and cover meet after meet. There was it was like a mini Olympics all the time. It was a lot of fun. So hopefully we can see a little bit more of that. Go ahead.
I actually had a friend who was at that meet in Nashville. And he actually hit me up when that was going on. And he said that this is the best they've seen. Track and field was dominant for a while there. You could speak better to this than I can. A few years back.
Carol Smith Gilbert, before she left, she really built up the program. And we saw, actually, for the Olympic qualifying, she recruited Jackie Cowan, who made it to the U.S. Olympic trial final in the women's hurdles, and a couple of other. She had a couple other people come through who were also in line for the Olympic team, not just from the United States but from a couple of other nations, and she really built up the program. And then she left, and Jeanette Bolden's come in, and as far as I'm concerned, this program's right back to where they probably feel that they were under Coach Smith Gilbert, right?
Well, and the theory I heard about this, and again, this is from somebody who knows more about track than I do. I'm more of a amateur track guy, is with Gilbert, they were strong in specific events in track and field. Whereas Bolden has tried and is trying to implement to be good at everything in track, not be good in 1 or 2 specifics, like maybe, be stronger in indoors and be consistent indoor, outdoor, but be good at every part of the track and field competition, not be just strong in, for example, the 100 meters and the 200 meters, but not be good in the long jump as an example. And that has taken some time to do that, but they're getting to that level where they're going to be good at just about everything in track and field, be dominant from that standpoint, instead of just be dominant in specific, spots in track and field competition. You buying into that?
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, the thing, too, is that, Jeanette Bolden doesn't get enough credit as the head coach of UCF women's track. This is a person, we talk about her as the coach. She was a competitor for the United States in the Summer Olympics in L.A. back in 1984.
Yes.
And won the gold in the 4x100 relay. She was a teammate, a contemporary of some of the greats in U.S. track and field history, like Evelyn Ashford and Florence Griffith Joyner. She was coached by Bob Kersey. If that name doesn't sound familiar, it should. Go look up Bob Kersey and what he's meant to United States track and field. So, and she knows a thing or two about how to excel at these sports. And a huge credit to Jeanette. I hopefully we can have her on the show too, because I want to, I love that sports history aspect of it, and someone who's, been to Olympics, who's now coaching our athletes at UCF. That's a fun thing to do. That doesn't surprise me one bit. So, all right, so let's go to the mailbag real quick. From UCFsports.com message board. By the way, credit, to you, Eric, for pushing the podcast up a little bit higher, because I was a dope and I forgot to put it up on the UCF Sports message board over there. But Kevin Reyes, who's been really supportive and really interactive with us, wanted to thank Kevin for his incredible kindness and for complimenting us on the podcast. He always writes us on the message board, and Kevin, we really appreciate it. Keep writing us. He does mention that he enjoyed listening to our recruiting show that we had with Brandon Helwig, where he talked about the early days back in the 90s. When he was heavily involved with the team. He says, I cannot emphasize enough how much I always appreciate the effort our coaches put into recruiting. It really is 24/7 sometimes. He said, just to add with what Brandon indicated, it would have been a better class if we had gotten a couple more offensive linemen. I would have fully supported a junior college quarterback. Also, for me, always comes down to supporting the players who committed to UCF. Let's see what else. He also mentioned that since this interview was prior to our Memphis game at home in basketball, he says that you and I, Eric, were concerned about how the team was doing after losing a few on the road, but that Memphis victory sure seemed to refresh our players for the stretch run to possibly 20 victories. You're absolutely right about that. I think that we'll look back on that and say that was a major turning point maybe for this team. Losing and he was he was also asking for your thoughts on softball, but I think we just gave it to him. So you're welcome, Kevin. But maybe with the offensive lineman, they had a couple of opportunities there. But I think that you're going to see a lot more. You might see some walk-on action on the offensive lineman side because of the thing that I keep coming back to is that for running that offense, you don't need the 6'7", 350-pound road graders out there. You need guys who can move,
right?
And those are guys who quite often are not going to get scholarships or scholarship offers, or maybe even be rated all that highly. So, but they may walk on from UCF, or they may come on board a little bit later, and then turn into the kind of offensive lineman that Scott Frost wants to be outrunning the large defensive lineman. So what were you going to say, Eric?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I was going to say similar things to that, and I will also tell Kevin, because I know Kevin goes to a lot of the softball games.
Yeah.
But I don't get a chance to actually see him because he can. I'm in the booth after a certain while and stuff like that. So just tell Kevin that certainly appreciate him tuning in. And if he ever wants to say hello, he's more than welcome to say hello to when nearby the booth there. So
yeah, drop on by the booth, and I may be right there next to you because remember I do some PA here.
That's right. Well, so. That's true.
And then Michael Redkowski on Facebook, who commented on our Facebook page, and thanks to Mike because he sometimes chimes in a little bit over there. With all the talk about the Black Friday football game, UCF basketball is at the Disney Thanksgiving Tournament on Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, and. Credit to Mike for pointing that out because that's going to take away from basketball in that tournament, isn't it?
Yeah, and he was commenting based on our podcast last week. We debated about the Black Friday, and I'm against it. You're fine with it. What's unique about this upcoming year in the Black Friday, as you mentioned, UCF will be playing at that basketball tournament in Disney. Used to be called the Old Spice Classic. Now it's I forget what it's called, but I've been going to that tournament the 3 of the last 4 years.
Yeah, it's at the gym that's over there.
Right by the Y World. Yeah, the Advocare. It's the Advocare Invitational Tournament. Ooh, it just popped in my head beautifully. I was just there this past year. The Gonzaga won the tournament. They beat Iowa State. Florida was in it. Miami was in it. It's a great deal. They do a great job over there. I've gone to that tournament 3 of the last 4 years, like I said, and it's a fantastic tournament.
This usually has the field. Sorry, cut you off there, Eric, but I was going to say this: the field UCF is going to be playing against Mizzou, St. John's, Oregon State, West Virginia, Long Beach State, Nebraska, Marist.
Well, obviously, West Virginia is the headliner there with Bob Huggins and company, the Mountaineers.
Don't sleep on Mizzou.
Missouri's been a bottom SEC team. They've kind of had their issues, but they're still Missouri. It's kind of cool. Nebraska's been kind of a middle pack, bottom Big Ten team as well from there. Marist is a great program from up in the Northeast. But great to have UCF there. I think it's great that UCF gets to play that tournament. The issue that Michael brings up is the tournament runs Thanksgiving Day, Thursday. Black Friday is when the semifinals take place, and what they do is they play not only the winners bracket games, but they play loser bracket games, consolation games, and stuff like that. So in other words, no matter how UCF does, they'll get guaranteed 3 games. So they have this, the day 2 is on Friday. The championship games and that last day is on Sunday. They have Saturday off. So that's how they do it. Thursday, Friday, Sunday. So to Michael's point, UCF basketball will have a conflict that Black Friday going up against UCF USF. Now, UCF basketball maybe gets the afternoon session or they might get the evening session. We don't know. We won't know that probably till the summer. But nonetheless, that's a conflict because let's be honest, there are fans that support both and would probably have liked to gone to both. There's probably going to be some fans that are going to pick the basketball if football goes a certain way during the year and stuff. So there's just more competition now on Black Friday. It's very unfortunate in that regard. But I'm willing to guess that Michael maybe agrees with my point of view that this should not be on Black Friday, period. Yeah. I'm just going to go with that.
I mean, unfortunately, I don't think there are going to be too many UCF fans who are going to make their way down to that basketball. I mean, it's kind of an awkward time to have that tournament. But you're right, it is a consideration. It would have been preferable if we were able to get a bunch of more UCF fans down there for that game, especially if they are playing the likes of West Virginia, Nebraska, or Mizzou.
Oh, well, that's the nightmare scenario is what if, and who knows? I mean, who knows? We won't know this. Again, the brackets will be announced at some point in the summer. But here's a hypothetical. What if UCF was playing West Virginia on that Friday? Oh, man.
Yeah, that's going to suck. Ugh.
Obviously, and to his point.
Unless they have the game like in the early afternoon and then the football game's in prime time.
But even still, that's not easy. Go from Disney all the way to the campus. There's some people that just like to tailgate the whole day. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, you could pull it off. You hop on the 417 and head up.
The funny thing is, maybe this is his point in all seriousness. I was kind of sarcastically joking that he agrees with my side. But another point that could have been made is, if this game would have been played on that Saturday, the football game I'm talking about, it would have actually worked out fine where you could have had the basketball on Thanksgiving Day, on Thursday, Friday. You go football Saturday and then back to basketball on Sunday because they're all in the same town, in the same area. So you could have made a huge weekend out of it. Instead, it's Friday. So it is what it is. So we'll see what happens. It's obviously time will tell, but that is unfortunate, especially for me. I'm a big fan of that tournament, like I said. And in fact, the one year I didn't go to that tournament on that Friday, I think it was the year that UCF played USF. No, actually, I did go to that tournament. I just didn't go to that Friday. I think I went Sunday. But it's a great tournament. So hopefully a lot of UCF fans get to go to that tournament because it's a great field. And it's a great time there, and it's good basketball, and it's really fun. I went to go this year, and there was a lot of different fan bases from all those teams come. So that is one conflict that another of many conflicts that pop up on Black Friday, which is why I don't think it should be on Black Friday. I don't think that game should be on that weekend at all. And for those people that, by the way, they were reaching out to me about it's a rivalry weekend. It should be where your rivalry is. My response to that is, Miami and Florida State's a rivalry. They don't play Thanksgiving weekend. A game that you've covered, Jeff, Florida and Georgia. They don't play that on Black Thanksgiving weekend. That's a big rivalry.
Florida State too.
That's a rivalry too. But my point.
That's why. That's my other point is that the other rivalry is Florida State and Miami play before that because Florida State play on Thanksgiving weekend. You can't same thing with Georgia. Florida's got Florida. If you're two big rivals, one of them's Georgia, one of them's Florida State. Well, your in-state rival, you play them on Thanksgiving. So that's the point that I make. So
yeah, but there's other rivalries in Army Navy, big rivalry. They don't play Thanksgiving. They play this. In fact, they play. They have their own day.
They play around Easter.
They got their own day. So,
right.
But no, thanks to all the comments and pointing that out with Mike, which we did not bring up, and I forgot to mention that last week. So good catch on that.
Yeah, cool. So thanks again, and folks, remember you can reach out to us on our Facebook page at Black and Gold Banneret. and also reach out to us directly at blackandgoldbanneret.com. We also try to post everything on Brandon's message board at UCFsports.com. And you can reach out to us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. What do you have this weekend, Eric?
Well, I'll be producing Tuck and O'Neill pretty much all weekend and all week, I should say. But even all weekend, they got a special Sunday show. They're doing 11 to 1 on 1080. I'll be producing that. And then I'll be going to that UCF men's basketball game. Hope to see some of you out there where they take on Cincinnati on Sunday. I'll be out there for the Florida game next week, too. So it's a big week on campus, right? With women, too. We got women's last 2 home games for women. Saturday against SMU, as you mentioned. Sunday, you got the men's game against Cincinnati. Monday night, you got your women's team against Temple, which is a top 25 team. And then I think at that Wednesday, you got Florida and UCF baseball. So it's a busy week coming up. We may have to do next week's episode show from location.
I know we may have to. Yeah, we may have to be on location to see. It's a busy time of year, and but this is fun because we have a lot to talk about. Sometimes the shows go a little long, but we appreciate you guys hanging with us. I know last week's show was really long, and this week's show is not as long, but still quite long, and that's perfectly fine with us. So lots to talk about this week. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and you can follow Eric at
Eric Lopez Elo.
And you can follow me at Jeff_Sharon. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and rate us. In fact, leave us a comment if you will. And also don't forget to, if iTunes is not your particular flavor, you can hit us up on SoundCloud, TuneIn, and Google Play as well. So as we wrap up, thanks once again to you, Eric.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
And thanks to you, UCF fans out there, for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We will catch you next week.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.